I'm Anna Prescott. I'm graduating this year from the Department of Psychological and Brain Sciences, and I work with Dr. Jay Hull there. So my research is pretty scattered, but for my dissertation I focused on the effects of exposure to violent video games on thoughts, feelings, and ultimately behavior, although for my research we were looking at attitudes as sort of a proxy for behavior. And what we were trying to learn is essentially why we see in the greater field, literature and psychology, why there's a connection between playing these games and behavior, specifically behaviors like drinking and smoking, rather than necessarily things like aggression. So I was looking at whether the extent to which feeling like you chose to play the game of your own accord increases changes in attitudes of acceptability for these behaviors. And the idea there is that if you choose to play the game, or at least you think you chose, although I kind of made you think so, that for some reason makes us adjust our behaviors to think that a lot of different behaviors like drinking and smoking are more acceptable than if we were simply assigned to play exactly the same violent video game. So I was looking at the mechanisms that cause that to happen, including changes in feelings and reactions to the games. I think teaching and mentoring honestly is the part I will remember most. I like my research, but I came into grad school because I ultimately want to teach, and so I've really taken on those roles pretty strongly because I love it. And every day that I was working in the lab, it was a good day because I got to work with my undergrad research assistants. And terms that I was TAing, I mean, a lot of students think of TAing as kind of, oh no, this term I'm not going to have time to do my research, and I'm more like, excellent. I'll still get my research done, but I really love the teaching, so. I think anybody who works with students, the moment everybody talks about is especially one-on-one, when a student finally understands something, or the light bulb moment. I think that's pretty common, and that's true for me as well. The thing that I think is less common that I always think about as a rewarding moment is doing the final grading of the papers, which nobody likes grading, and I don't really either, but when I'm reading through those final papers, there are always some really awesome ones that stand out. And when I finally look at which student is which, it's every time there's some student that I wouldn't necessarily expect to have one of the best papers, but they pulled it together. And I TA the research methods class in particular, and some students really struggle with the stats and the research design and how to use control groups and things like that. And in both cases, there was a student in my class, the 2 times I TA'd that class, who wasn't a major, and they were really struggling and trying really hard, and nobody was sure till kind of the very end how it was going to go, but those 2 students ended up having some really awesome papers, and that's great. The student is even there at that time, but that's when you know that they learned something in the class, and that it was due to effort. It's not just that they have a knack for this, but they tried really hard. As far as mentoring, I think the important thing is to be adaptable, because you can't have a certain style given that all of your students are different. And so I can try to use the same approach with different students, but I'm always adapting. And what I try to do is make sure, especially in lab, with one-on-one mentoring situations, I really try to make sure that the students have some independence or ownership over what they're doing in the lab as early as possible. Because if you put a student in a lab and just have them entering data, it's not rewarding for them, they're not putting in good work, and it's not helpful for anybody. They're not learning anything, I'm not getting anything done really that's that useful. So instead I try to give them some independence early on and work from there to figure out how much more or less guidance they need. Because I've found that if I kind of let them stand on their 2 feet and figure some things out, they do better, and there's just a lot more happening in the lab situation. So my prior experience teaching involved teaching 4th grade in Guatemala and teaching college level sort of American culture classes in English at a Chinese university. So this is my first experience really getting to teach native English speakers, which itself is pretty cool, but also at Dartmouth in particular, I think the students are, they're really high achieving students and they're really motivated. And yet they still have pretty varying backgrounds. So not the same level as, my 4th grade Guatemalan students, but you've got students who are working all the time and you have to kind of work around their schedule to make sure you're not just assuming that everybody's exactly the same. But such, bright, motivated students is really, I think, a cool experience to get to work with them. I have trouble accepting praise, I guess, so I always get kind of awkward about it, but this is a really big honor. I have wanted to be a teacher, a professor for undergraduates since I was an undergraduate, and I've been kind of working toward it slowly, so this is a pretty big deal to me.